Mariners head to Milwaukee to kick off their first road trip of the year. We'll get you set for that coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, April 5th, 2024. This is Tiny Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the promo code LockedOnMLB, that's all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And the Mariners are kicking off a 3-game set tonight with the Brewers in Milwaukee. First time the Mariners have been in Milwaukee since 2019. We got a little bit of news here to start us off. Samad Taylor has been promoted to the big league club because Ty France is going on the paternity list. So congratulations to Ty and Maggie. Now, Colby, how will the Mariners handle first base in Ty's absence?
The obvious answer here is Luke Raley. Raley played a ton of first base in spring training. He's got a lot of experience in his pro career playing first base. He'll be pretty good over there, particularly against Peralta and Ray, the two righties that are starting in the series. Against the lefty, against Hall, they might go with Dylan Moore. He's kind of really the only other option. I guess they could go Mitch Garver against the lefty, but
I prefer not. I prefer not.
Just
I think tomorrow we could see Dylan Moore at first and Samad Taylor in left field.
Right. And that's kind of what Samad Taylor does. He frees up Dylan Moore a little bit. Now, again, I would like to point out that we really don't have any evidence to suggest that Luke Raley should never hit against lefties. For that matter, we really don't have enough evidence to suggest that, Dom Canzone should never hit against lefties. But, these guys tend to get, pigeonholed pretty quick as platoon guys, and they're not really given the opportunity, despite both guys performing very well against lefties in the minors. So non-zero chance that Raley gets a shot tomorrow against the lefty at first base, but I would expect Dylan Moore to get the start, and I would expect Samad Taylor to play probably left field on Saturday. So yeah, it'll be Luke Raley. He's the obvious answer here. They didn't call up a corner infield guy. They called up Samad Taylor, who is very much not a corner guy. So does that mean Samad Taylor couldn't play first base if you absolutely needed him to? No, he's a pretty good athlete, but this is Luke Raley's gig until Ty France comes back. And then if they do want to bench him against the lefty, which again, not saying they shouldn't, I'm not saying they automatically should. We had this conversation last year with Jared Keltnick. But if they do want to bench him against the lefty, then yeah, Dylan Moore will get that start because there's just no other option. Again, unless you want to go with Garver, and Garver's already missed 3 games with back spasms. I don't think you want to risk that. So it'll be Raley against the righties, and then I suspect it'll be Dylan Moore against DL Hall tomorrow.
A player can miss a maximum of 3 games on the paternity list. But this is a little bit of a weird road trip for the Mariners because after this series, they're going up to my neck of the woods, north of the border, to Toronto. And because of the logistics that involves of crossing the border and all that, I kind of wonder if they might try and find a way to keep Ty in Seattle for the remainder of the road trip. What do you think?
I mean, I think at that point, they'd probably have to play a man down just because, unless Major League Baseball gives them an exemption, which is possible. I mean, it's their own rule. They can change it whenever they want. Yeah. But I think they would at that point have to play a man down, which they might do because obviously you're not putting Ty France on the IL. He's not injured. So that's out the window. And if he only has 3 days, it feels like the real simple solution would be for Major League Baseball to just extend leave if they have to, take it on a case-by-case basis. And so, if there's a reason that Ty, can't come back on Monday, can't join the team in Toronto, my guess is they would probably just play a man down, which is not ideal. But again, you're not putting him on there's just no other list you can put him on. I mean, unless the commissioner wants to put him on like the commissioner exempt list or whatever, but that's typically for suspended players. So,
Right.
yeah, I think, logistically speaking, getting up to Toronto and all that, like it might be a bit much, particularly if the baby hasn't arrived by, this weekend.
Mm.
So yeah, Ty's going to want to be with his wife. The Mariners really don't have any other course of action after the 3 games are up that I'm aware of.
Mm.
So what it would come down to then is either the league office, makes an exemption here, or the Mariners play a man down. I don't I guess they could send down Ty France, but then he's got to stay down for 10 days and blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
no.
And that's just an IL stint. Like what's the point? So,
Right.
yeah, it's pretty much, it's going to come down to, either Ty gets here on Monday or you play a man down. And I don't think the Mariners are going to try and force Ty France to come back to the team before he feels like his wife and his new child are in a good spot and he can do that. So we'll see. But yeah, the 3-day rule feels a little barbaric, honestly.
Sure.
Like a lot can happen in those 3 days, and that it's labor. Nothing about it is smooth sailing or anything like that. So it feels a little bit mean of the league
Sure.
to have a 3-day max. I imagine that was something that was collectively bargained. In which case, shame on the players for not thinking of themselves and their families a little bit more than they
Mm.
did. But yeah, 3 days is tough, but it's kind of on the back burner. Obviously, the main
Mm.
priority right now is that Ty and his wife have a new. I believe they're having a girl, if I remember correctly. So
Mhm.
hopefully they have a new beautiful baby girl here in the next few days, and after that, we'll see. We'll see what the Mariners want to do. We'll see what the France family wants to do, and you just kind of go from there.
On the baseball front of things, the Mariners losing their best hitter right now through the first 7 games of the year. So obviously this means, I mean, this was the case no matter what, even if Ty was still around. The rest of this offense really needs to step up, right?
Well, they don't have to, but if they don't, they're going to be looking at 3-7 in their first 10. So, their choice, but I would recommend they do it.
Right. Yeah, that'd be nice. So, and hey, maybe Samad Taylor will give them a little bit of a jolt if he's in the lineup tomorrow. That's obviously a player that you and I are both pretty excited about. We'll talk a little bit about him and get you set for these pitching matchups in just a moment. But first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Factor and PrizePicks. Eat stress-free this spring with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or Vegan and Veggie. Also discover more than 60 add-ons every week like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, snacks, and beverages to help you stay fueled and feel good all day long. What are you waiting for? Get started today and fuel up for your springtime goals. Factor meals eliminate the hassle of prepping, cooking, and cleaning up. Simply heat and savor the good stuff. Customize your weekly meals with the flexibility to get as much or as little as you need. You can pause or reschedule deliveries to suit your lifestyle. All you have to do is head to factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 and use the promo code LockedOnMLB50 for 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box. That's promo code LockedOnMLB50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 for 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. Spring training is over and baseball season is in full swing. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first inning runs, take your pick more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. You can also get in on the basketball playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a whole new level during the postseason later this month. Tonight, I'm taking Corbin Carroll more than 0.5 total bases against the Braves and Cutter Crawford more than 4.5 strikeouts against the Angels. Download PrizePicks today and use the promo code LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And just a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So Samad Taylor comes up to the big league club as a result of Ty France going on the paternity list. And again, this is a player that you and I, Colby, have been pretty excited about this offseason since the Mariners acquired him from the Kansas City Royals for right-handed reliever Nathaniel Garabitos. And tell us a little bit about Samad Taylor. I know we've talked about him quite a bit on the show over the course of the offseason, but for those that are not familiar or did not watch those episodes, what kind of player is Samad Taylor?
He is a second base / outfielder is kind of how he's classified, mostly outfielder, but can play some second if you need him to. Best fit is probably left field, not a much of an arm. Again, just kind of a fringy average arm. Left field, definitely athletic enough to play center if you need to, just doesn't have a lot of experience out there. He's a very quick guy. He is a very athletic guy. Older minor leaguer who has produced at just about every level of the minors, and specifically last year, absolutely crushed left-handed pitching in the minor leagues. He's got some pop. It certainly was one of the surprises we saw from him this spring. There's some, legitimate, over the fence power there. Not a ton, but more than his size would seem to indicate he has. He can definitely steal some bags. He'll do that for you if he gets on base. He'll draw walks, put the ball in play. Strikeouts, it's a bit of a red flag. It might be what prevents him from being an everyday player. But there's a lot to like with this profile. He's going to give you good at bat. He can run like mad. He can play some pretty good defense at multiple spots. Like he's a nice player. I think the Mariners see him as Sam Haggerty. I think that's basically how they view him. He is cheaper, younger Sam Haggerty. And we know how valuable Haggerty has been at times for this club. So I think Taylor pretty much fills that role. Now it's only a 3-day stretch here in theory, so can't have that much of an impact, but we see what kind of, value Mariners role players in the past have had, from Dylan Moore to Sam Haggerty to, Jose Caballero. So like, these are all guys who have kind of similar skill sets. Now Moore certainly has more power than those other three guys. But it's the same idea, right? Like they might strike out a little bit, but they're going to draw walks. They're going to hit the ball hard. They have some pop. They can steal some bags, and they can play 3 or 4 different spots without killing you. So it's a kind of a classic part-time, bench player, role player type of profile here. But the power is something that we saw in the spring that I think surprised quite a few people. And there were quite a few scouts, in spring training who were really impressed with Taylor, some to the point where they were wondering how, the Mariners were going to put him on the major league roster over other guys. So, there's certainly a lot of buzz around Taylor in camp. It's a profile we like. There's a lot of the little things that we like from the players that the Mariners acquire. Minor league performer, multiple ways to help you win games, all that stuff. It's a really interesting player. And if you watched any of spring, or you paid attention at all during spring training, that this guy generated a lot of excitement from, both Mariners fans and the team in general. So they really like this kid, and I don't know how much of an opportunity he's going to get, but it is interesting. He's the first one up. He's the guy they go to in this case, not Cade Marlowe. Clase got hurt, but not Clase, not Haggerty, who's also hurt. So interesting to see their decision here, and we'll see how much they use him over the next 3 days. I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't get a start on Saturday.
Agreed. But yeah, it's going to be a pretty short look at him, and I don't think there's anything he can really do over the next 3 days that's going to keep him on the big league club. I assume once Ty's ready to come back, that Samad is just going to go back down to Tacoma. But excited to see him nevertheless, because again, I think we are going to see him tomorrow, or we might at the very least see him, late in a couple of these games, or at least one of these games as a, defensive replacement, or, base runner, etc. So we'll see. So let's talk a little bit about this Brewers team. This is a different looking Brewers team They obviously traded Corbin Burns late in the offseason, but still a lot of talent on this team. They didn't really go full into rebuilding yet. They didn't trade guys like Willie Adames. And they added, a player like Reese Hoskins in free agency, Gary Sanchez as well. Tonight, we're going to see Freddie Peralta, former Mariners prospect and Brewers ace. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a moment, but just want to go through this roster real quick. Quite a few former Mariners on this roster. A favorite of yours, Jake Bauers, of course. And then in this bullpen, Thiago Vieira, and also, you're going to love this name, JB Bukauskas, Colby, is in this Brewers bullpen. This lineup per roster resource on Fangraphs: Sal Frelick, William Contreras, Christian Yelich, who seems to be kind of back on track here, Willie Adames, Jake Bauers, Reese Hoskins, Oliver Dunn, Bryce Terang, who's off to a really good start, Jackson Churrillo, one of the top prospects in all of baseball, and then on the bench, Gary Sanchez, like I mentioned, Andrew Monasterio, Joey Ortiz, and Blake Perkins. And then in that rotation, Freddie Peralta, who we're going to see tonight, like I mentioned, DL Hall, we'll see him tomorrow. Colin Ray, we'll see him on Sunday. And this bullpen right now missing Devin Williams, but they got some decent arms in there with Abner Uribe, who obviously caused some noise in that Mets series with their
like him already.
Yeah, with those two teams beefing with one another, which was really fun to start the season. Joel Payamps, Hobie Milner, Elvis Peguero, some really interesting arms in that bullpen. So what do you think about this Brewers team, Colby?
Yeah, they're definitely an interesting team. Most of the power comes from the right side. When you look at Hoskins and you look at Churrillo and you look at Contreras, most of that power is coming from the right side, but they do have some good lefty bats as well. It's a team that feels like, it's about a 500 team, maybe a little bit more. Kind of depends on what kind of year they get from Hoskins, what kind of year they get from Adames, and those guys have some high variations, what they can do. But in a weak NL Central, I think they still think they can compete for this division. They have a lot of young talent, a lot of athleticism on this team, but they do obviously have some holes. Anytime, Jake Bauers, as much as we stand the Bauers Rangers, as much as, I like him, like if he's in your lineup every single day, you have some holes. Like let's just call it what it is. You have some holes in your lineup if that's the case. So, it's a pretty good roster. I think they can pitch. Particularly, we know Peralta can pitch, and we know that Milner and Uribe and Payamps.
Yep.
Payamps. Is that the official pronunciation? You sure?
I believe so. I can double check.
I feel like we're missing an A in there, but yeah. Anyways, he's coming off of a great year last year. Uribe's got nasty stuff. Milner's really tough on lefties, so they'll pitch it a little bit. They have some interesting matchups they can deploy late in games. They're going to be athletic. They're going to run around a little bit. They have some power in this lineup. It's a pretty good mix. It's a pretty good mix of lefty righty. It's a pretty good mix of power versus speed, athleticism versus non-athleticism. I don't know what that would be versus, but it's a pretty balanced team that needs a couple of things to go right in order for them to truly compete. But again, the NL Central, not great this year, not a great division. So could the Brewers get those couple things they need to go right? Could they go right? And could they factor into the playoff race here? Yeah, I think they could. So, obviously whether or not they factor into the playoff race really doesn't matter on April 5th, because you're just playing them for the one time this year and then you're never going to see them again. So, unless you both happen to play in the World Series, which would be fun. So yeah, I think the Brewers are an interesting team. I think there are some issues they could cause for the Mariners, but overall, I actually think this is a pretty decent matchup when you look at the lineup and how it's built for the Mariners and their pitching staff. Now, can their offense take advantage of some pretty good matchups on their end? First 7 games says no, but we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, and it is Payamps, according to Baseball Reference, but it's not Joel. It's Yoel. Payamps. Yoel Payamps. All right, so we're gonna get into these pitching matchups, starting with tonight's Logan Gilbert versus Freddie Peralta in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. Get this. Now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen as we get you set for the Mariners and Brewers series starting tonight. Just a reminder of what we're going to be doing over the next few days with the Mariners coming to Toronto. Of course, I'm going to be going to all 3 of those games. We're going to be recording Monday and Tuesday's episodes a little bit earlier than we usually do, and we're going to be doing CTZ Mondays for our Patreon actually on Sunday. So that's going to be dropping on Sunday on the Patreon. And then Wednesday, we'll be doing a post-game show. That's going to be an earlier game, I believe a 12 o'clock start Pacific time, 3 o'clock local time here, Eastern time for me. We'll be doing that as soon as I get back from the game. It takes me about 50 minutes to an hour to get home from downtown Toronto. So let's get into tonight's pitching matchup. Logan Gilbert versus Freddie Peralta, Colby, the former Mariners prospect. The last time the Mariners saw Peralta was in spring training not too long ago, and they actually handled him pretty well. But obviously, spring training is a lot different than the regular season. This time around, Peralta is actually going to be game planning for the Mariners lineup specifically. So what are your expectations heading into this one?
Yeah, they're going to have to grind out at bats. They're going to strike out. Freddie Peralta is one of the better strikeout pitchers in all of baseball. So it's not one of those things where, they strike out and it's against Logan Allen, so we're all wringing our hands and all that stuff. It's not. Like, Peralta is a legitimate, probably a number 2 starter in the grand scheme of things. He's definitely the Brewers' ace now, but he's probably a number 2. It's really good stuff for Peralta. He throws hard. You guys have seen it. I think you guys have seen it. He's a guy who is, despite his smallish frame, he's only 6 foot tall. He's about 200 pounds. But he's well built. He throws hard. You look, he doesn't give up a lot of hard contact. At least he didn't last year. He strikes out a ton of guys, gets a ton of whiffs. Really good extension guy. Just throwing that out there. Gets really good extension, especially considering his height. It's a fastball, slider, changeup, curveball combination. Fastball is, mid 90s, 94. Gets a lot of whiffs on that pitch. It is one of the better fastballs in baseball. So you have to be ready to hit early. You don't want to fall behind on him because if he gets you in an 0-2 count, he's probably going to put you away. So gear up for the fastball. It's really good. Again, it's 94, but he has really good extension off the mound. So it plays up even more than that. It's going to be up in the zone. He's going to get whiffs on it. This is one of those nights where the Mariners are probably going to strike out 10, 11 times. And it doesn't mean that they were bad. I mean, that's just how good Freddie Peralta can be.
Yeah,
so
this is one of those nights where they might strike out double digits, and you don't feel too bad about it, considering who's on the mound.
Right. So, but there are opportunities here. He's not an ace, right? So he is more of a number 2, but he's still a very good pitcher, and it doesn't typically. you typically don't feel good when you go up against a guy this good, but we just watched the Guardians hang 8 on George Kirby. So, and Kirby is probably a number 2 right there with Peralta. So, things do happen, but yeah, you got to be ready to hit early. He's going to throw strikes. He's going to throw the fastball quite a bit. And the fastball is a really tough pitch to square up. So you got to be aggressive. You got to go up there and you almost have to take some chances early in counts. Assume you're going to get a fastball. And if he drops a slider on you, just accept you're probably going to see some ugly swings tonight. Like this is one of those games where it's triage at the plate. You're just trying to survive and put a few runs up on the board. And then hopefully you get to him early before he really settles in, but you're just trying to scratch out 1 or 2 runs, every couple innings and just kind of end the night with 4 or 5 and hope that your pitching can kind of counter what Peralta and the Brewers pitching is capable of doing.
Yeah, and I think the only note really on Logan Gilbert is don't do what Luis Castillo and George Kirby did their second time through the rotation.
Gilbert against the righty-heavy lineup, most of the dangerous bats, just in terms of like home run power, are right-handed in this lineup. That's a pretty good matchup for Logan.
For sure. All right, so DL Hall against Bryce Miller, and then Colin Ray versus Emerson Hancock. Anything stand out to you about either of those matchups?
Well, you're definitely losing the Hancock start. Dude's not good, but
you gotta stop with us.
You're the one who brought him up. So yeah, Hall, really good stuff. Really questionable command and control. So he's going to leave pitches in the middle of the plate. You better hit them. He's going to walk you. You better be willing to take the walks. He's also probably going to strike some guys out because again, it's really good stuff. And if he has average command and control on the day, which is not, non-zero chance, it happens for every pitcher, he has the potential to dominate you, particularly without Ty France against lefties, one of your better hitters. So Hall could be tough. He could be, the easiest guy you face just because he's going to give you lots of opportunities to score runs off of him. You just have to take them. So again, command and control, we'll see. You never know. Maybe he comes out and he's got 60 grade command for the first time in his career. And you're just like, well, that's unfair. But more than likely, he's going to leave pitches in the middle of the plate. He's going to get into hitters counts. You have to take advantage of him there. Again, like with Gilbert, a lot of righties in this lineup. It's pretty balanced, but 5 or 6 guys who can hit home runs in this lineup, one of them is a lefty. So that bodes well for Bryce Miller, who dominates righties, as we know. So I think this is a pretty good opportunity for Gilbert and Miller to have good outings. Hancock, you're just hoping he gives you 5 innings of 3-run or less ball. You're just hoping he gives you what he did last time, which is a number 5 performance. Totally fine. And against Colin Ray, you should be able to win a game. If Hancock gives you 5 innings of, decent baseball, you should have a shot there. Ray is not anything to be afraid of, but obviously, we said that about some of the Red Sox guys, and you never know what Mariners offense is going to show up. But yeah,
I've seen this team in the past get shut down by Vince Velasquez.
Yeah, I mean, you can't rule anything out. But Ray is got the weakest stuff of the guys you're going to face this weekend. He's the guy that probably presents the best matchup for you. So hopefully you can jump him and get him out of the game early, and give Hancock some runs to work with like they did, on Monday. So,
right.
For Emerson, you're just hoping for a number 5 starter, which is all you can really hope for, and he gave it to you last time. So, righty lefty doesn't really matter with him. He doesn't have stuff that's really effective against either, especially effective against either side. So the whole righty heavy thing doesn't really apply to him like it does to Gilbert and Miller. So we'll see. But I think, Hancock, if he can give you 5 and he only gives up, 2 or 3, then I think you have a really good shot to win that game. So Saturday and Sunday, certainly more winnable on paper than tonight's game. But if you can steal tonight's game, it really sets you up really well for the weekend. And you just gotta get back to winning series. Start winning some series. You have 3-game series here. Can you put up 12 runs in this 3-game set? And can you do it not by scoring 12 runs off of Colin Ray on Sunday, but getting shut out in the first 2 games?
Right.
Can you put up 4 or 5 runs every single game in this series? If you can, then I think you have a really good shot of potentially sweeping the Brewers. But they're not going to roll over. They're not a bad team. You have to play much better against them than you did against Cleveland and Boston. Otherwise, you're going to get swept.
That's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, once again, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.